helps me.
No problem. Once again, welcome to another edition of Interruptions. I'm your host, Otis Smith. Today, my guest, you've seen her on Space Invaders, you've seen her on Piece of Cake, you've seen her also on Perfect Note, and we all know and love her from Young and the Restless. I'm talking no other than Tonya Williams. How you doing?
I'm good. Man, you went way back to dig out those other credits.
Well, I know you did more than just Young and the Restless.
Yeah, no, it's great though. And I was like, was I on those? It was like, yeah, I was like, wow, he's pulling way back.
Even though, man, oh man, I fell in love with your Young and the Restless. So before I give you my first question, just a backdrop.
Yeah,
My mother and my grandmother, my mother's mother, all watched Young and the Restless. They watched everything that was on CBS.
I love
So
it.
as a kid, as a little boy, whether I'm with my grandmother or whether I'm with my mother, they had me watching soap operas.
Absolutely. That's
So
how we build fans.
yes, but here's the crazy part, and I tell this to my wife all the time. The reason I don't work with my hands is because watching the characters, Jack Abbott,
Yeah.
Victor Newman, I didn't see anybody working with their hands. I saw suits, briefcases. So I knew whatever it is I want to do, that's outside of sports. That's what I want to do. I want to put a suit on
But
and
that
have
is
a
an
briefcase.
amazing story. That really says something. You're speaking to the power of television, of film. You're speaking as a young boy. That's what you picked up, and that became something really important. I think that's really amazing.
Yeah, the imagery. Yeah,
Yeah.
the television. So I always, I've had the pleasure to interview Bill Dukes, Dennis White, Tanya Pinkins,
Yeah.
and so every actor I always ask this first question the same, only because what you guys do for a living in the arts is just unique from everyone else. So I wanted to know, how did you get into acting in the arts, and how did you choose it as a career?
Sometimes it chooses you, and that was one of the
Okay.
cases with me because when I was growing up, my father was a judge. I mean, he was a barrister and then a judge, and then my mother was a nurse, and I'm an only child. I did not grow up in a household where acting was something that you even acquired to do.
Okay.
It was considered very lowly to think to become an actress. My father's impression of actresses would be like prostitution, almost on the same level. That's
Oh
how his
wow.
mind worked. So you have to
Sure.
understand, I did not grow up with this like, oh yeah, I want to be an actress. It wasn't even anything I thought about. I did play classical music. I played piano, and so growing up,
Okay.
even as a young person, I did those kind of concerts that young people do, and
Sure.
win some little awards for that. And so that to me was my performing part of
Okay.
it. Um, but I had no idea what I was really going to do with my life. And then around when I was still in high school in 16, 17, I was living in Canada at the time. I'm born in England and my parents are Jamaican, but in
Okay.
Canada is where we were living. And there was an agent that saw me somewhere doing something. And I was with my mother. And that agent, she had said, she has an agency. It turns out she's one of the top agencies in Toronto for
Okay.
like models and, doing commercials and those kind of things. So she'd ask my mother if she could send me out for some auditions. Cause I think we're talking the late 70s. There
Right.
was just now an awareness, especially in Canada, to maybe have more than white people on
Okay.
camera.
Okay.
Just an awareness of
Awareness.
it. So we weren't
Different.
even in it yet. It was an awareness. Um, so I remember my mom said yes, as long as it didn't interfere with schoolwork or any of that stuff. Um, and I went to one of the first commercials I went to was a milk commercial, and I booked it, and it ended up being a really big national spot. And those commercials when they're a national spot, it's like you become like a household.
Yes.
Like people don't know your name yet, but they're pointing you out on the street just because you're on this national commercial.
That's the
And
milk
milk,
girl.
yeah, and milk is big. It's a big product. So pretty soon other commercials came, and then when high school finished, I still didn't take it seriously because I was just doing some
Okay.
modeling for catalog, doing some TV commercials. It wasn't
Sure.
like I thought I was an actor.
Okay.
But I started meeting other actors, and I realized this was an actual career. Um, and I liked it more and more. I was already an avid reader. I loved characters and reading, and
Okay.
I actually thought I would get into some sort of like maybe be a therapist, because I love anything to do with the human psyche or the spirit or any of
Okay.
that stuff.
Okay.
So then I found it. I applied to an acting school. It was Ryerson University, and I got in. You had to audition. There were thousands of people. They choose 40. I was one of the
Wow.
people that they chose. And then I started my journey in studying to be what it was to be a professional actor, what it was to really understand character and how you work. And I'm a big believer that people should train. I know that there are people who hope that someone just sees them and they become a big
Sure.
star, but I believe this business is so hard, it's so difficult, and it's so transient that you want to be someone who is looking deeper than maybe just becoming famous or just making money. This
Right.
has to be a journey that you're doing for your life, no matter if you're successful at it or not.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. And that's one of the questions I always ask actors: Are they born, or can they be taught? Because
Oh, I
sometimes.
definitely believe you can be taught. It's a trade,
Okay.
like any
Okay.
other trade. You might have certain personality traits, but
Mm-hmm.
there's actors who are incredibly shy, very successful actors who are very introverted, very successful actors who are, and
Okay.
they've trained though. You are a profession. You know how to handle yourself on stage. You know how you handle yourself in a character. I don't believe people are born actors. Actually, I think it's completely the opposite. I think you
Okay.
might have people who are just maybe funny, or people like to look at them, or they're, but
Sure.
that's not the skills that would be saying, that someone might be paint a portrait
Mm-hmm.
naturally, but
Right.
training will always make them better.
Sure.
You
Okay.
have skills,
A skill
taught
set.
skills.
Okay. What was it like for you to book that first, whether it was movie or TV? What was that like, for you to say, okay, I got my first part, I got my first acting gig. What was that like for you?
Well, clearly it was really exciting, but I have to say it's so funny that somebody that was at that first commercial audition that I went to is
Uh-huh.
now a casting director in Canada. So I've known him for forever.
Oh, wow.
And he likes to tell the story. He says, "You were like so blasé when you were in there." And I have had people tell me these things, but I'm also a very pragmatic person. So I'd gone to an audition where there was a ton of people.
Hmm.
Once there's a ton of people, I don't even attach myself in any way. That's like throwing spaghetti on a wall. I have no
Okay.
attachment.
Okay.
But I got a call back, and in the
Hmm.
callback were all white people and me. So I was thinking to myself, and there were guys and girls and whatever. So I thought to myself, well, I know one thing. I'm in this commercial because
Right.
they wouldn't, because I use common sense. They would not be bringing back one black person not to hire them. So I
Correct.
said I was blasé because I was kind of looking around like, who else was I going to be working with? Because I already knew I had the gig in my mind. Like, why else would they drag my ass back here just
Right.
to say, we're not hiring you? If they'd have been one other black person, I would have been, oh, there's the competition. But there
Right.
was only one person, it was me. So that was my blasé. I was just like, but when I booked it and when I was shooting it, I've always been, maybe because of my training in piano, it, it's always work for me. I don't feel that
Okay.
thing that people, there's not an ego sense for me in it. But I think it's because I had so many years already performing in front of things, and I know the hard work it takes when you're playing piano. It is just rehearsing, and when you're acting, it's just rehearsing. Um, I hated high school. I hate that kind of the drudgery of studying and tests and whatever.
Right.
And I always thought it was funny I went into acting because people think acting is some sort of, whatever the glamour is they have in their minds. You know what acting is? It's homework every single night. It's a job where all
Okay.
I do is, you remember when you were in school and you had to memorize history and,
Yes.
you had to memorize the dates and the things. I actually picked a job that became like high school. Every night it's like you're learning lines and you're rehearsing. And I'm like, to me, glamour is I'm laying on a chaise lounge, looking at the ocean, getting a massage while I'm eating a burger and French fries. That is a good time. I don't see where the good time is just learning lines all the time
Time.
and then actually performing them. And it's
Right.
take after take after take. And it's this shot and this angle and this angle till you're sick of it. So I feel a little bit different, and maybe because I was 16 when I started working in commercials. So for me, it is work, it is a job, and even standing on a red carpet. I mean, I'm sure you've done that where you've been interviewing people, maybe for your show, that maybe you've been on a red carpet or something like
No,
that.
I haven't been on the red carpet.
Oh yeah. Oh, it's so much fun. You get to stand in the hot heat of the day, dressed up with your full makeup on, wearing high heel shoes that are killing your feet, and you
Right.
get to crawl for maybe a 2 mile stretch. Crawl so that your makeup is just like dripping, and you're hot and you're sticky and you're miserable, and everyone keeps asking you the same question over and over, and you answer it like you've never heard it before. Just like, can't you imagine anything more glamorous than that?
Yeah, a friend of mine told me that, it's funny. A friend of mine who sings in the group Jagged Edge, and
Right?
he said just what you said. He said, like, you get good at interviews because you'll sit in a room and they'll give the interviewer, 10, 15 minutes because there's so many a day, and
Yeah.
you're being asked the same question over
Over
and
and
over.
over and over.
Yeah.
So imagine, Otis, I've been in the industry just a little over 45 years now. So
Hmm.
in 45 years, how many times do you think I've been asked, how did you get into this business? How did you start this?
Yeah.
I mean, I understand that the people need to ask those questions, but by then you have such a polished answer. You
Well,
just,
the reason, like, and that's why I gave you some context of why
yeah,
I
yeah,
was
yeah.
asking the question, is because I know his journey is different.
Everyone's journey
So
is completely
so
different.
I try not to ask even though it may be the same question you heard before, I try
Yeah,
to
you're
give
gonna
the
get different answers.
context of why I'm asking it,
Oh yeah,
because everybody gets into it differently, different
yeah.
reasons. Like
And
you said with
everyone has
you,
a different audience. So your audience might not have heard the answer to that person. So we totally understand.
yeah,
Actors and people in the industry totally know why the questions are, but to us it's work. It's still
it's
work.
work, right?
Yeah. I
Well,
call everything work.
can you explain to me what is it like to go on an audition? Because we
Yeah,
hear, well, go on an audition for you, because we hear so
yeah,
many people say they would go on audition, and so they know this was a type of character. I remember just listening to an interview Jaleel White did, and he
right,
talked about they never saw Jaleel White. He came as Steve Urkel. So
right. Oh, I see.
right. So that's why I want to know for you, what was, when you went on different auditions,
Yeah.
what was that like for you? Were you going as yourself and then just reading the lines and trying to deliver? Or did you try to come in as the character based on how you knew it at that particular
It
time?
depends. It really depends on what you're auditioning for. So when
Okay.
you're talking about sitcoms and comedy,
Hmm.
those characters are much more two-dimensional, you know. So you need to bring some sort of a funny voice, a funny look, a funny, you need to be in a different way. When you're going on a soap opera, it's a little bit different. You're they're looking at someone who is going to be in people's homes daily for
Right.
years. A
Hmm.
sense of real authenticity needs to come through. You can't just be playing a caricature of a character, because you're
Okay.
not going to be able to sustain that, and the audience is going to be able to see through that. So it really depends on what the medium is, what you're talking. Even people who do voiceover, you may use your voice in a way that you wouldn't if someone could see you as well, because
Right.
if you don't have the visual component, your voice becomes something very different.
Got it.
So those are the kind of things that I say training is all about. And if you're on stage, you're bringing something very different. It's not as intimate as television. Television is a camera that is couple of feet from your face. It sees everything. And the stage is a massive area where people's eyes are everywhere, and you have to capture their attention in a way that
Gotcha.
you don't when someone's got your face right there. So you use your whole body on stage in a way that you wouldn't use your whole body in certain television or film pieces, because you would
Sure.
just look like you were overacting if you were flailing your arms around or
Right.
whatever.
Right.
But that's maybe what you would need to do on stage. So those are all kinds of things that you learn in
Hmm.
as your training as an actor. But to take you through an audition, every audition is works the same in one way. Your agent, hopefully you have an agent, because you want to make sure that the jobs you're going for are legitimate jobs. And if you're a woman, you want to make sure you're being sent somewhere that you're safe. And so agents, that's part of their responsibility.
Gotcha.
Then the agent is called, like, is not even said maybe that they're looking for you, that they're looking for somebody who is playing a nurse in whatever. And they send what we call sides. And the sides are the scenes that you are actually going to audition. So you may not even really know what the whole show is about. And more
Okay.
and more, I remember when I was first starting out, people would sometimes send you the whole script, but now people are so secretive or so scared about stealing. They send
Right.
me a scene, and I honestly don't even know what the scene, what it has to do with the rest of the show. So I can't worry about that then. I have to only worry about the scene and making whatever that scene the reality I want to make it,
Sure.
even though it may not really fit what the show is. But as I said, once you sell something authentic, they won't
Okay.
care if it fits within their show or not. They'll feel the truth of it. So you go to an audition in the olden days, I like to say now, you would take a regular photo and you would go to a
Right.
location and you would see a casting director or maybe a producer and a casting director. And these days, you pretty much audition like this. You do it on your camera. I don't know who the casting director is. I don't know who the producers or directors are. I just do my lines and scenes and then I email it somewhere, and
Right.
then you hear later. So it's very disconnected. It's not personal at all, which I find difficult because every actor is different. I'm very actor, so I need to
Sure.
work. I work off the room. I kind of get a sense of people's personalities and sense, and I use that in a way. I manipulate that in a way.
Sure.
I build that into my work. So when I
Okay.
can't see or hear anybody, it's just like stabbing in the dark as far as I'm concerned, and it's just hit and miss at that point.
Gotcha. So
But that's
it's
basically
still
how an audition goes for
no,
me.
no, no. I love it. The one thing about here interruption when we ask a question, we're looking for your organic and authentic answer.
Yes.
So
So that's
yeah,
that's
because
that's it
trust me,
totally.
if it's and one and here we don't. I'm not about my opinion
Right, right,
because it wouldn't be a sense to have you on the show if we just gonna
right.
talk about my opinion.
But
What's
you
the
know what's good? I
purpose?
forgot to say too, that I forgot to add, then 99.9% you do not get the role. So let's forget that.
Yes,
I don't
that
want to forget that part. So I hate when young people turn up and they're like, oh yeah, I don't want to act anymore because I went to an audition and I didn't get it.
the
I
role.
was just like, wow, that was a lot of staying power. That was like one audition. And you decided, I don't want to be on this anymore. I'm like, your odds are probably better to go to Vegas, put your money on the roulette table and play that. And your
Well, it's
odds are
probably
probably greater.
because of what you stated earlier, being you're looking for the fame and the money, and not
Yeah.
the art of
Well, that's
be-
that's definitely a
of
part of it, but there's still no guarantee. You could be completely
correct.
artistic. You remember,
Sure,
let's all remember, Van Gogh died in poverty. His paintings are the most
sure.
famous paintings in the world. He died thinking he was the worst painter on the planet. So you may become famous after you're dead. So you don't even know.
Hey,
You don't even know.
hey.
So you can't really live that way. But I do want young people to always think the
Okay.
odds are against you. So just start with that. And then you just keep moving forward. Just keep pushing, just keep auditioning, just keep trying. If your number ever comes in, everyone's going to act at that point like it just happened like you're the lucky one. But you know what? You just kept playing the numbers and your number came in.
So let me ask you this: did you realize, and probably not, because you probably, like you said, you were just into the work, but once you got on Young and the Restless and you was
Right.
working with Chris, I wanted to also pay homage to him. So that's why my backdrop is a
I know. I love it.
picture
It's my favorite picture. Yeah.
picture of you and him. And then Shamar Moore and Victoria as well. Did you guys realize the impact you guys were having as African Americans on such a popular show? Because we,
Yeah.
as you know, blacks, you know how we do sometimes. We're gonna root for your character because you black. It's
Yeah.
like, well, where's Olivia? Well, we need
Yeah.
more of Olivia. Where's her scene? What So did
No,
you
I gotta
guys?
tell you. So this is what's funny is I had
Mm,
never seen a soap opera before. Like I had never
okay.
watched a soap opera. I did not know there was this thing called soap opera. I don't know what I was doing in the middle of the day, but growing up, I did not know there was a thing called a soap opera. And my mother is, one of those people that if I said, oh, I met Tom Cruise, she'd be like, oh, that's nice, dear. She doesn't know who that is. She doesn't know.
Right.
That's just that's just what my parents were
That's
like.
nice.
So it was not, yeah, that's nice, honey. Just like anybody else. So when I got on the show, like every other job I've done, I'm like, oh, mom, I booked this thing on this, guest spot on this series. She'd go, that's really great, honey. But that's, so then I booked Y&R, and I think that it all happened very quickly. There was an audition. I actually auditioned for Drusilla. That was the character that they had put out. I said to my agents I didn't want to do that character, but that's a whole other story, because as a Black actress, there were things I didn't want to do. Definitely nudity was one of them, but I also did not want to play those. I grew up watching TV, and there were characters, always Black characters. They were illiterate. There were always the criminals.
Sure.
There were always the prostitutes. There were always,
Yeah.
So my agents know right off the top, I don't want to do those kind of roles. So when they said this, I'm like, you want me to go for the illiterate, just homeless girl on the street, whatever. It wasn't anything I was interested in, but they were saying, go and see that casting director. If she likes you, will think of you for other things. So That's why I went. But what was funny is I auditioned like I'm talking to you right now, because I did not want the role. So I read all the lines like I'm a complete professional. I didn't read it like what I knew they wanted, like a street person with the slang and the whole thing.
Right.
I didn't do that because I didn't want to do that role anyway. So who cares? But I wanted the casting director to at least see what it is I might want to do.
Okay.
So then I left that audition feeling good because I'd done what I wanted to do, and I went home. And then 2 days went by, and my agent went, you have a callback. Now you have to understand how floored I was. I was like, a callback for what? And he was like, for Young and the Restless. And I didn't know what Young and the Restless, I mean, I knew it was a show. Sure. I didn't know it was called a soap opera. I didn't know what soap operas were. Gotcha. So I went, because I was stunned. There was no way they would have wanted me back. But he goes, it's a different character. It's a character called Olivia. And she's a doctor, and she's blah, 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 blah. And I was thinking to myself, why didn't they make me read that to begin with? That's what I was thinking. So I went to this audition, and I think I was the only person at the audition.
Wow.
It's something weird like that. So it's another one of those milk moments. I was like, where are the other people for this role? And then when I went in, it was Bill Bell, who's the creator of the show. And I was reading with the actress that I wouldn't know at the time, which was Ronnie, who played Aunt Mamie. She was the one I read with, and I read the scene. And then they said, thank you so much. And I got up and I walked out, and I went down the hallway, and I went to the elevator, and I went down that elevator, and I went down the hallway. And just as I was going out of the building to the parking lot where my car was, the casting director ran after me, and she said, can you come back in and go to wardrobe? We'd like to hire you. It was like that.
Wow.
Now I was like, wow. I mean, I like that kind of getting hired. So I say that to say there are times, because honestly, I'm telling you the good stories, of course, but I've auditioned a ton of times for things that I've never heard of, got back. No one hired me for, but those are the times where it reminds you that you're on a journey, because that was just weird. Like the whole scenario was just so weird. It found me, because that was not something I was expecting at all. And so when I start the show now, I still don't really understand, but I had called my mother the minute, and I said, oh, I'm on a show. She always is proud and happy for me. Honey, that's great, dear. Right. So I say, I'm on the show. It's called The Young and the Restless. And she was like, oh my God. Oh my God. So she went like nuts. And I was like, you know this show? And she goes, I watch that show every day. She'd been watching it for years, but I never knew she was watching the show. Wow. I've never seen my mother even watch television, so I don't even know what that was. So I was totally thrilled that my mother knew of a show I was actually, because she never knew of anything else I did. And then after we aired, it was like within 4 days, the studio got so much mail. And so we were stars. The minute it aired, it went insane. And so we knew the impact. It was really crazy that I was not expecting any of that at all. And it was absolutely delightful to be in something that I love to do, and to know that the audience respected what we did so much. That meant everything. Like, as a Black actor, you're thinking, this was 1990. Like, these opportunities did not come up. I mean, it was like I won the lottery basically. And it's funny because there are actors who continue to try and find other things.
Right.
And I told you, I'm a little laid back about stuff. I'm like, I already won the lottery. Like, what do I don't even try to win another lottery. Like, what for? I'm not greedy. I won a lottery once. I'm
And
good.
and it was, and I can see that, like you said, the fan mail, because the the roles that you guys played were everything. It was kind of coinciding also of the imagery that Mr. Bill Cosby was putting out there as well. And
Absolutely.
and so you seeing Christopher's character working as a junior executive, worked his way up.
Absolutely.
You were a doctor, you know, and so, and then even with Victoria's character,
It evolved.
it evolved, but she was also a ballerina,
She was a ballerina
as
in real life.
right.
Yeah.
And so it tied in. Now, the
Yeah.
person that came in with the street edge actually was Shamar Moore's character,
He was.
Malcolm.
That was so funny. And he's just so beautiful, nobody cared. Like at that
Yeah,
point.
Pretty Ricky. Yeah, we had to call him Pretty Ricky. Yeah,
Yeah. Nobody cared about that because he just looked so beautiful. They were like, he could have played, an executive or the street guy. They would have loved him the same way. But I forgot to tell you something in the story that I just
sure.
remembered. So I'm now working on the show for a few years, and I was at some event, and Bill Bell was there, and he and I were just talking. And then he said, I created the role of Olivia for you. I never knew that. He goes, after you auditioned for Olivia, it totally hit me that we could not have a Drusilla without an Olivia. Like he felt it was irresponsible. Like to only have this
Wow.
one character be
Wow.
homeless and whatever. He just started to see so many stories about two sisters that are completely opposite like that. And his mind worked that way though, because he could think of a million stories right away. Because you can see how that built. If it was just Drusilla by herself, I mean, she's such a wonderful actress and she would have done it great, but there would have been nothing to build on. You already
Sure.
came up with, there was a history of animosity. There was a jealousy. There was this thing between these two sisters, and it
Right.
continued to drive so many stories for years after that. And I
It
thought
did.
that's the genius of a Bill Bell. He could see it. But I want to say, those are like the old days. Now, when you audition, it's like a million people have to greenlight you. Those were back in the days when Bill Bell was such a visionary that CBS just said, whatever Bill wants to do. He could audition and hire someone right on the spot. Those kind of things don't happen anymore.
Well, I still, at the same time, I tip my hat to you, because sticking to your guns paid off for you, because when by you saying, look, I don't want to take these type of roles, I want to do, and there's nothing wrong with those roles, but
No,
it
I
just
think it,
it just
yeah,
it wasn't for you. So
yeah,
that allowed him to see your demeanor, your speech, your who you are as a person, say, you know what, let me create a character
yeah,
that she could actually sink her teeth into,
yeah,
versus trying to fit her into something
yeah.
that she really don't want. So that's a testament, and that's for everyone who's going to see this, to sometimes you have to just stick to your guns,
I do.
and let the door open up for you that's meant for you.
Yeah, but you know what? I'm not so naive to go. I was raised in a very different way. And I totally understand. I have friends who are actors. They grew up in really challenging families in
Hmm.
areas. Their lives were, they didn't have the luxury. I remember talking to Isaiah Thomas once, and he was telling me about his life growing up. And
Hmm.
it was just so horrible that I thought, were you angry? Were you this? He goes, you can't even think that way. I was just hungry. So I did not. So there are people that make choices. That's why I don't judge them.
Right.
But I had opportunities. My parents planned for me. I was given opportunities. It made no sense for me. I could stand the higher ground if you
Sure.
say, because at the end of the day, I was not going to starve. So I knew that.
Got you.
I knew at any point I can call either one of my parents and go, send me money. I
Got
need
Okay.
whatever.
Okay.
So I am not judgmental. I think it would be great. I think everyone should take the higher ground, but I'm also realistic to know there are people in circumstances that I can't imagine, that I've
Right.
never been in, and they do what they need to do to survive. And I feel fortunate that I did not have to do that.
Sure.
So So I do want to say that because I know that I have met friends and they're lovely people, but I've heard their life stories and I'm like, I can't even imagine living like some of the
Yeah,
things
but
they
you
live in.
took but that's what I'm saying. You took the path that was for you, and that's
Yeah,
why
it
it
doesn't matter
worked.
with me.
That's why it worked for you.
Yeah. So if any story here, the story is parents out there, don't have any kids until you can raise them proper. Don't have children until you can give them the best opportunities. If you can't afford that, don't have any kids. It's not like there's a shortage of people on the planet.
No, it's not a shortage.
It's just,
It's not a shortage.
yeah, I'm a big
What?
believer in that, by the way, a big proponent of people not having children. Not because I don't like children, it's just that there's so many children out there and people just
It's
can't keep having kids and thinking kids don't just raise themselves. They have to have
correct.
guidance and direction. You have to be in a position where you can help them and give them the opportunities that the world is not going to give, especially Black kids. Where's those opportunities going to come from? Your parents need to have that in hand so that they can give you a start in life. So I was fortunate. I was fortunate because of the parents I have. They're key to any of my success. And we may not even get to it, but I hope you understand that a
Mm.
big part of my life since the year 2000 has not necessarily been YNR, but Real World Film Festival and Real World, the initiative that I've created that's all about creating more jobs and
No,
opportunities.
no, I was going. Yeah, yes, I was about to ask you that question. If you could talk a little more about that, what you created,
Yeah,
and
so I got to Canada when I was 12, and of course I started my career there, but I always was aware of how little opportunities there were for Black people. If you think there's a little opportunity here in America, you can only imagine what it was like in Canada. So when I found my success here, one of the things I wanted to do was create some sort of a platform, an initiative, something that could create more access and inclusion. And I created a film festival, and it's for Black, Indigenous, and people of color who are Canadian. And this is our 20th year, it's the 20th year anniversary. We're
okay,
very excited about that. Anybody who happens to be listening, if it's between October 14th and 19th, can certainly see all our industry panels and webinars. The films themselves are geo-blocked because we're all on digital this year. This just happens to be COVID year, and every festival is on a digital platform. But so you can't watch the films unless you're in Ontario. So if you're listening in Ontario, that's great, Ontario, Canada. But the industry panels are worldwide, so anybody can look at those. And if you go to the website, realworld.ca. But we also launched this year a national database called Access Real World. And this is an opportunity for especially producers, directors, people who come from America and shoot in Canada. A
okay,
lot of times they're not hiring the Black, Indigenous, and people of color who are Canadian. And this
sure,
database is an opportunity for them to look for. We have 98 professional categories right now, from
okay,
vet medic to teacher for tutor to costume and hair and makeup to construction. We've
sure,
got everyone on there. So in Vancouver in particular, we get a lot of Vancouver productions that go up there. And we want to remind them that, just don't always keep hiring white people for
right,
for being on set. It's really important to also hire. And we've been so successful. We've managed to launch a lot of careers through Real World, and we work very closely with the Government of Canada, from the Heritage Minister to
sure,
Telefilm, which is a funding agency, to the Canadian Media Fund, which is an agency, and to making sure that there's equality and leveling the playing field. And so I wanted to make sure I got that in, because
no,
I do
yeah,
believe that the journey of your life is not one thing. I know when I left YNR, there were a lot of fans going like, no, and people
right,
crazy going, go back to the show, whatever. But you have this one life, and I believe everything is a cycle, and you go to the end of that cycle for you. Other people may want you to continue, but inside yourself, you feel like that journey is the end here for me. And as much as I loved YNR, the fact that Shamar wasn't there anymore and Victoria wasn't there, um, the people weren't the same. Bill Bell had passed away. It was a
right.
very different place, and I just didn't feel the same passion that I
Hey,
felt
eh,
before.
as a fan, I listen. As a fan, I know, because we forget that you all are human.
Yeah.
And so when you see, what was her name? Was it Jean who played Mrs.
Oh
Catherine?
yeah. This is
So
Mrs. Jeannie Cooper.
yeah, Gina. So when people pass on, the man that played Mr. Chabot,
Yeah, yeah,
uh,
yeah.
Jab-
Jack Abbott,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So when those characters start changing,
It's like a
it's all
hole.
yeah, because you fall in love with the actual, and so when you like, I hadn't seen Y&R in so long. I tried to, when the pandemic first hit, I
Yeah.
said, well, there's nothing on TV. Let
You
me.
don't know who any of those people
I was
are.
like, who? I could only name. I could only name, of course, Eric Braden,
Yeah.
and then the young man that plays his son.
Yeah.
Uh, After that, it was like, you know what? I can't watch this because it
No,
was
and
it was,
yeah, and
and
it
so
feels the same because the writers themselves were gone and new writers come in and then they start wanting to take your character in places that you're like, so it got to the point where I'd wake up and I was like, why am I doing like when you know that the only reason now is your paycheck, for me, that's when I want to move on. Like I cannot, I don't want to live out my life. I knew I was not going to be a person like a Jeannie Cooper or those people. I want to live out into my 70s and 80s doing this one
doing
thing
something.
when there's so much that life is about. So that journey for me, in fact, I could have left 3 years before that. I was ready then, but I stayed 3 more years. I was ready, ready, ready. And I wanted a new challenge. And just being an actor again, I loved acting, but I wanted to do something different. And now that I run my festival, it's like I'm producing a show. I do produce a show every year. This is a huge
Sure.
event. Um, but now that I'm the boss, it's very hard for me to. I'm the age I am now. It's just very hard for me to think of sitting around doing kind of what I was doing before, even though I loved it then. My mother says there's a season in everyone's life for everything. There's a time that you
Yes.
want to backpack around Europe with just your backpack. And there's
Right.
a time you're like, no, I need a hotel and I need a bed and I
Right.
need room service. So it's like I've just reached a different stage in my life. And real world fulfills that. And when it doesn't fulfill that for me anymore, I'll make sure someone else runs it and I'll start my next journey, which I don't know what that is, but it's a feeling and you have to go with it. So the very thing that you said, where I'm still fortunate that I make those choices because of this truth the truth of my life,
Sure.
that I'm not in a situation. This is something that actors sometimes get into. They start spending money before they have it. They start living a
Right.
lifestyle that is not sustainable. As I told you, I have a very pragmatic mind and I came from a different kind of family. So I hoarded away my money. I lived a very simple life because I knew the benefit was not then. The benefit was later when I would have freedom. And so when I was ready to leave, it didn't matter to me if I ever worked again as an actor because I knew it wasn't like I had millions of dollars, but I had made myself comfortable and I knew I had security. So if you don't plan like that as a young person, then
Mm-hmm.
you can just feel like you're a trapped person because now you're just working because you have bills and you have mortgage and you
Right.
can go to your grave that way. And I do believe that, especially in the Black community, we're not always taught how we um, how in the short term suffer
Sure.
in the short term so that you have this amazing life later. My mother took early retirement as a nurse at 55. So she's 90 years old now. Do you realize she's lived longer out of the workforce than in it
Wow.
because she prepared her
That's
life?
beautiful. That's
It's been really
beautiful.
beautiful.
That's beautiful. That's a testament, and she was able to, pass that on to you, and freed you to, like you said, to the
Yeah.
place that you was like, I don't want to do this anymore.
No,
So,
exactly. Just remember as a young person, you might want to impress someone with your car or your house today.
hmm hmm
But there's nothing impressive about watching old people like do jobs they don't want to do just
right,
so they can put food on the table and whatever. So think about that then. I would see actors who were broke when they were older. You got to make that money when you're young and vital and beautiful and hoard it then. So when you're
right.
older and ugly, you don't care. you, just, you just relax. I'm like, what do I care now?
Well,
So you have to
my
think of the
final
long-term reward. Don't always be thinking about the short-term reward.
my final question for you, what I wanted to know is, what inspired you when you first got started, and is it the same thing that inspires you now?
I would have to say no, it's not the same thing that inspires me because what inspired me at 16 and 17 and 18 does not inspire me at 62. It's kind of like completely different.
Sure.
So at the time I was inspired because it's a challenge. Like, can I do
Okay.
it? You know,
Okay.
and it's fun. And what do you have to lose? You're 16, 17, 18. What, it's like your life is not going to be over when you don't succeed at the things you want to succeed about.
Right.
Now at 62, I'm more cautious. I'm like, I can't rebuild my life from scratch. I'm not 16 years old anymore. I'm
Right.
much more discerning about the people that I hang out with. I'm much more discerning about the things that I do. I only have
Gotcha.
X amount of years ahead of me if I'm lucky, X amount. And I want them, you know what thing, I want to be healthy. That's what you think about. I don't think about what my work is going to be. Like that's not
I
my
got you.
priority. My priority now is I don't want to have debilitating disease or long suffering pain. I wasn't thinking
Sure.
about that at 16 and 17 and
No,
18.
no, no.
So now when I make choices in my life, um, a lot of people always want us to travel, especially when you're soap opera people. They're like, we have this event. We want you to, can you present this award or whatever? A lot of me goes, do I want to sit on a flight for 5 hours? Do I want to go here? Do I want to go there? No, I'm tired. I need to take care of this body in a way that it's not the body I had. It's
Right.
not as strong. And um, you think of people like, who is the woman that just died from Star Trek? This was a couple of years ago.
I know you said
Leah, like she played Princess Leia. And when they wrote that she had died, they also wrote her schedule. And at her age, she was like on a red eye and she was shooting in one country and then she was shooting in another country. Sometimes you just have to stop and go, that is not what you can do at a certain age, even if you want to do it. That time has passed.
past.
And I'm a
Yeah.
big believer in, I say no a lot to people and I know it upsets them, but I have to go, I can't, my body doesn't bounce back. I can't, first of all, I can't take a red eye flight anywhere anymore. I used to. Now when I fly, it has to be in the day. And then I need the whole next day to sleep and rest myself before I even think about the day after to do anything. So you have to take your life. I pace it very differently.
Okay.
Even you, remember we were maybe doing this interview at 7 p.m. I'm like, I'm not doing an interview at 7 p.m. at night. I used to,
Right.
even though it might have been, something with the East Coast, but yeah, I have a cutoff time. I stop work. I relax. I make my dinner. I watch TV. I have a great life, but it's a great life for me. I'm sure other people would see it on paper and go, she should have been a bigger success, but I want them to
No,
know
no. Listen,
it's
whatever.
the life you choose is the one. Make sure it's what you want to do, not what other people
Correct.
want you to do.
Right.
Because your happiness comes from not what they think. Your happiness is only going to come from what you're living every day. My mom has a great life, like a great life. And I think she was always my beacon.
I'm glad you said that. Everything that you said, I love it because I've always tried to tell people you can't let people project what they want you to do on you because
Yeah.
they'll be happy, but you won't be happy with your life because you're
Yeah.
living for other people. And
Yeah.
so, like you said, I wanted to interview you because it was just that time in that area, that space that you were in at that time.
Hmm.
Like I said, the imagery I saw allowed me to the jobs that I've worked. Everyone that knows me know I'm a suit and tie guy,
Right. Right.
and so your characters and it showed the possibility. It pushed the envelope forward of
Yeah.
what we as blacks can be. And jobs, because trust me, they're female doctors. Someone could have saw you playing on Y&R and said, you know
Well,
what, I,
and
I
you know
want
what?
to be a doctor.
I was going to say, I'm too tired to get up and walk back there. I have an award from the Black Women's Physicians Society, which means a lot
Wow.
to me because they gave
Wow.
me that award because they said when I started on Y&R, the jump of Black young women wanting to become doctors was
Mm.
so significant. And they said it was specifically because of the character that I played. That's the kind of thing that makes you, this is why you do the kind of thing that you do. You want to make that kind of impact. But exactly what you said about the suit and tie, there were women that maybe never thought they actually saw a woman be a doctor and it made them want to do that. Um, the medium of television and the screen medium is the most powerful in the world. So there's a lot of parents out there who might be encouraging your kids, lawyers, doctors, whatever. That's really good as well. That's important. but don't negate the power of this industry. Maybe you don't have to be like a filmmaker or an actress. You could own a studio. You can be a distribution company. But I
Yes.
guarantee you see the changes that happen in the world because of a 9-minute video of police on George Floyd dying.
Floyd. Yeah.
There are leaders in the free world that could not have galvanized the world in the way that that one video did.
Yeah.
So we're in a time where video is so powerful, and Black people need to own it. Like, they need to be in control of it, or you're not going to be able to navigate the narrative in the way that you want to. So I love the fact that Tyler Perry, who I do not know at all, has built a studio. You know, Oprah
Yeah.
Winfrey has built. These are legacies, and I think we
Yes.
should be encouraging our young people to think that way. You have to control. You can't just always be the employee of the white people.
Well, no, yeah, that's why I started my own podcast. So now
Absolutely.
I didn't have to worry about a segment.
Yeah.
So when I ask you a question, you can answer it and get a complete sentence and thought out,
Yeah.
and not, oh, we got to go to a commercial break. No, we're not doing that. So that's
Yeah.
one of the reasons I created my podcast, because when interviewing people like you, I want you to be able to say what you feel and what you say in that moment and not get cut off and then go
No.
to a commercial. And then by the time you come back, it's like, what were we talking about?
Yeah.
So I
So you
appreciate.
understand it. It's power, and Black people haven't had a lot of it. So if I did have children, I would certainly be raising them to. And power doesn't mean that you swagger around or
Sure.
whatever. Power is just that it's on your terms,
Correct.
at your pace when you want to. There are homeless people out there that probably have more power than a lot of people, because I saw a guy the other day. He was stretched out on the sidewalk on his back with his arms out. And I was like, now, like, can you imagine? That is someone who has a sense of freedom. Like,
Freedom. Yeah.
I would be worried that someone is going to run over me with a car or run over me, whatever. He was like, I feel tired. I'm going to lay down
And I'm
here.
gonna lay right here. Yeah. I'm
And
gonna lay
I
right here.
totally looked at him in a bit of admiration. He looked very peaceful and happy with himself. It all comes in different forms.
Comes in different forms. Yeah.
Different forms.
Inspiration comes in different forms. So
Absolutely.
I thank you for the opportunity and the conversation to
Thank you.
interview. You
Thank you.
are a jewel to us all. I thank you for your style, your beauty, and your grace. The way you've carried yourself over the years. Just you being yourself.
Thank you so
And
much.
I look to have you. Back. You know what's interesting? I want to have you back on the show, and I want to have you on the show with the other Tonya Pinkins. I think you got
That's
you
just
two.
right. I met her a couple of times, like at like a daytime Emmy Awards, but we're
Yeah.
talking a million years ago.
Yeah.
But she seemed absolutely lovely. She's been she's always been New York, so of course I've been lost. We don't really
Sure.
talk, we don't really see people who are in New York.
Right, yeah.
Yeah,
But I would love to have you too, because I want to do something where I have different actors on and get everybody different perspective and views on the
right.
industry and different topics. Because I think that's one of the problems with today. Everybody's trying to be one-minded, singular, and that's not really the way the world works.
Now
We
it
all
doesn't
expect the
it doesn't take away from Tanya Pinky, because I love her and love to talk with her,
same.
but I'd rather sit across from someone who's talking about how we are going to make change in the industry for more inclusion and access. My head's in a very different space, so I don't think about acting in the way that people are still. I really think much more about what are the huge shifts and catatonic changes that we
Well,
need
then
to
now,
make.
now we're talking about maybe someone, and I know he's busy, but he was my first big interview.
Yeah.
Now you're talking about like Bill Dukes, you know.
Bill Dukes is great, but you know what? It's young people. I'm interested in the young people and what they're doing. So an old person like me, I want to sit with someone who's like built a distribution company now, or built a
Okay.
platform of some kind. There's a lot of young people doing amazing digital things. I'm very
Like it's a Ray. Yeah.
I'm very forward thinking that way. I don't live in the past very much. So when
Oh,
people
no problem.
interview me, I'm already thinking 10 years from now. I'm not even thinking what happened 10 years ago.
No, that's great, because you can't
Yeah.
live in the past, whether it's success or not success.
Yeah.
However it goes, you can't stay back there. You got to go forward.
So
Yeah.
finding someone I don't know, first of all, I love speaking with people I've never met before. That's my favorite thing to do. And that they're
Okay.
maybe building a whole distribution arm. Maybe they're trying to figure out how to bring Black people from other continents and countries together in a global push for something. Those are the kind of thing I find fascinating.
We
Those
will
are the kind of conversations I like to be a part of.
trust me. I'll make it happen.
Awesome. Thank you
So
so
thank you
much.
for coming on the show. Make sure to stay blessed, stay safe out there.
Thank you, Otis. Lovely meeting you.
Love you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.